challenging for us, and particularly to also bind the work on the building with the work that we do outside. And I think if you've been taken on a tour and you've seen some of those stations with particular themes on them, you'll know that you'll immediately make the linkages. So we also, in this awakening of Braamfontein, we also understand that WWF is an organization that wishes to place itself among young South Africans from all walks of life who are part of a renewing population, as student populations generally are. And I think this also sends out the signal that WWF wants to send out, that it is an organization that works on things that are fundamentally important to the futures of those people. We are part of that community, and if you look at our staff, particularly in this office, you'll also see people who look as if they could be students almost. The sustainability issues around the building, I will take you through the nuts and bolts. Safe to say that WWF's board has wanted this building to demonstrate to others who in the property development business, and certainly to others who do properties, not just environmental organizations, but every development that happens, particularly in inner city situations, to see this as a demonstration site. This building was done, I can say, on the proverbial sniff of the solar rag. And you won't see particular bells and whistles, but you will see sustainability throughout the building. You will also agree that this is not a building that demonstrates access, that it's functional, and that it's here to be a home base for people who work, to provide a comfortable environment. And I think I have to acknowledge the role that WWF's board building committee in particular played to make sure that the executive brought this building in with the building contractors, architects, partners, project managers, and all on budgets. Those building committee members comprised of Tony Phillips, David Lawrence, Tebe Kalafeng, and Shamila Ibrahim, 4 of our board members. I just noticed Tony's just arrived from the airport, so Tony has been acknowledged. Thank you. Board members sat on our backs in a way that delivered a project on budget, and certainly very, very competitive for anyone who considers investing in property like this. We believe that most of the benefits will be harvested in time to come, because this is a building of which the operational costs are significantly lower had it not had the green features that you've been shown when you came in. At the same time, then, we have to acknowledge the fact that although the Green Star rating process is not complete, it's still underway, that we have every hope that we may target a 6-star rating. So in its modesty, we hope that we can get there. That process has to run its course. I'm sort of glancing now and again at the CEA of the Green Building Council, but he assures me that he feels that we certainly will get to 5-star rating in not 6. So the Green Star rating is not as important as the fact that there is our sustainability features woven into this building. So it wasn't an obsession of ours. We just wanted a building that was cost effective to run, one that was a demonstration place, and also one that people could aspire to replicating in some of its capacities. One has to acknowledge then, of course, that money goes into a building like this. We're a conservation organization first and foremost, and it therefore took some big decisions for us to make this call to invest money in this building. I'm happy to share with you what went into the building if you care to know that. We have open books on it, and you will agree it's very, very cost effective. But we have to acknowledge the primary donor was a request from Dora Hein, and that provided all money for which we used to build this building. You will also have been given a small little brochure on this building, or you'll be given one on the way out at least. At the very back, in font size about 2.3, we acknowledge the sponsors who contributed to this building. The size of the font is no reflection on the contribution. This brochure was printed very short notice, and I can assure you that the font size will go up in the next edition. But it is available in PDF form, and so we'll make sure that is properly rectified. We really also want to not pretend that this is the function to honor the donors, the sponsors of this building. We will provide an occasion. We sort of have a series of events that we will hold, and there'll be a specific one in which we will rejoice, and thank you for that. But please look at who involved in this. Of course, WWF as an organization depends on its conservation work, not on its buildings. I think it's important for me to take you on a quick whistle stop of the work that this organization does. Now, you will know that WWF has significant investments in the rhino space. I'm not going to talk about rhinos tonight because we know about planted rhinos. That's traditionally the work that WWF does. But if we look very, very briefly at the 10 top challenges as articulated for business by the World Economic Forum, then we find that 8 of those are directly linked to environmental issues. And those 8 in turn are linked to sort of 4 broad themes of work that WWF South Africa pursues. When we look at energy, it's not just about having electricity and energy to keep the lights on. That's, of course, very important. But it's also how do we produce that energy. In South Africa, more than 90% of our electricity comes from burning coal. That makes South Africa one of the most carbon-intensive economies. And clearly, if we're looking at a world in which our children and our grandchildren live, and if we have to draw a timeline on that, my children will look like me, or hopefully better, but my age, in 2050. And I will have grandchildren who will be in the prime of their lives around 2080. And so I am connected to dates that we see so far in the future. And the reality is that we've got to clean up the carbon intensity of our economy. And a lot of our work, a lot of our analytical work goes on around this particular issue. In the water space, we know that South Africa is a water space country. 98% or more of our current existing water resources are already allocated, are basically counted for. And so we are dealing with a future which is not very far off. We're not even talking about children looking like ourselves. We're talking about ourselves in another 5-10 years' time, when we are going to be walking into increasing problems with fresh water, as it also relates to underpinning the economic activity that happens in this country. Many of us who work for WWF also deeply care about the functioning of those ecological systems around rivers. So we also have a quota of water that needs to keep those systems functional. In turn, those systems also look after us by reducing the flood effects of storms and more. So without giving you an ecological lecture, I think you understand that both from an ecological and economic and a social perspective, it's absolutely vital that we nurture our water resources. The study done by WWF in collaboration with CSIR which many of you will be aware of, showing that 8% of our country's surface area produces half of our water. That is the equivalent of one soccer player scoring half of your goals. I know it's irrelevant with the fun because they don't score. But if you were following other clubs, half of your goals comes from one player and half of your goals saved. So you have a goalie that saves goals and scores half of your goals. That's how important 8% one player on the field is from a water perspective. And that is what WWF makes an obsession to look after in the next 10 to 20 years to ensure that we particularly care for those areas. The other area, and I'm coming very close to the end now, the other area of work relates to food production, because this ultimately comes from systems that have to be ecological machines that are still able to absorb the water, release water into systems, allow bees and other insects to pollinate fruit crops, etc. For all of these processes to function. And WWF's work in South Africa, in particular, looks at the supply chain of food together with some of our retail partners. And so our strategy is not to work with the tens of thousands of producers of food, not to work, because it's just beyond us, to work with the tens of millions of consumers on the other end, but in the middle. So if you see a martini glass with tens of thousands of producers at the bottom, at the base, you see a thin stalk of 5 retailers that control 70% of our choice. And you see tens of millions of consumers as that which holds the martini contents. This is the way in which we operate and where we try and seek to find leverage to go and work very closely in trying to influence the practices in that stalk of the martini glass. And then lastly, let me just reflect on the issue of waste. Waste accounts for us putting in bins or losing a third of available food. This is statistic not just in South Africa, but also global. It seems to be almost, you can only fold an A4 sheet 7 times and then it becomes too thick to fold. It almost becomes a rule, it seems. This doesn't have to be a rule. The waste in food in South Africa produces enough potential energy to keep the lights of Johannesburg going for 20 years. So this is the kind of scale of waste that we're talking about. We also talk with a function like this when you get 120 people who RSVP that they will be here, and you get 80 or 90 people rocking up. So I'm preaching to the converted, you are here, but that is also part of the process of waste. I think one needs to think when you do RSVP that I'm preaching now. Let me just finish off by acknowledging partnerships are fundamental to the work that we do. WWF is one of many, many organizations. A lot of us work arms locked, and I'm not going to acknowledge all of those partnerships, but tonight, just before the ceremony started, we signed a partnership agreement between WWF and the city of Johannesburg. And Ravi Naidu was here to sign this agreement of our working together in order to investigate and get together an understanding of what it will take to bring renewable energy technologies and solutions to scale in the city of Johannesburg in order to reduce our draw on the network. And you will understand that from government to national government to local government level, these partnerships are immensely important. And I think it's very fitting when we arrive on the corner of Melly, which we'd like to call